Coming off a bad weekend on the football field, are the Miami Hurricanes about to have a disappointing week on the recruiting trail?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. There's not today anyway. I am Alex Dono, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this loaded episode of Locked On Canes, which is brought to you by FanDuel, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We'll talk about urgent offseason needs for Miami, which could involve some changes or some tweaks on Mario Cristobal's staff. We will talk about Miami's chances, slim, still in it, to make the college football playoff. We're going to find out our fate on Tuesday night, or at least get closer to finding out our fate on Tuesday night. We'll talk about transfer portal targets because Miami is going to have to work the portal, as most programs will do this offseason. And yeah, guys, I mentioned a bad weekend on the field. 2 days later, I'm just starting to get over it. What happened on the road at Syracuse with Miami losing 42-38. Losing their shot at an ACC championship game, putting their college football playoff hopes in peril. And just when I'm starting to mentally move on to National Signing Day, which starts this Wednesday, we start to get some really concerning news on the recruiting trail. And as we bring on our good friend, publisher at canescounty.com on Rivals, Marcus Benjamin is with us. Marcus, this is like a shot to the groin right now, because usually as Miami fans, even after a disappointing game on the football field, we're like, okay, recruiting usually goes really, really well. But then we start to get these Steve Wiltfong RPMs dropping on Sunday evening, with Miami now projected to lose Gavin Nix, 4-star verbally committed linebacker, possibly losing him to the Oregon Ducks, and losing potentially Hilton Drake Stubbs, 5-star safety, losing him to Florida. How would, and again, 48 hours, we'll see, a lot can change in recruiting, but losses like that, especially on the defensive side of the football, how catastrophic could that be?
Those are the type of losses that could knock Miami out of the top 10 when it comes to the recruiting team rankings. Right now, they're ranked 7th on Rivals. So I think if you lose a Drake Stubbs and you lose a Gavin Nix and possibly a Tim Merritt, then you could possibly drop out of the top 10 because Drake Stubbs, for one, is your lone 5-star, dynamic player, can play multiple positions. He's probably your best pure athlete of the class. So it'd be really very disappointing to lose a Drake Stubbs, to a Florida, especially your rival. They're probably one team that you don't want to lose a recruit to, especially with Mario Cristobal's message a couple of weeks ago about his team kind of on the right trajectory compared to his Florida rivals. So that would be a recruiting turn that would go in the wrong direction for Miami. Now, Gavin Nix, I did hear that there was some Oregon smoke last week. They kind of wanted to keep it on a low, but it seems like it's now kind of gotten out. From what I hear, that there could have been maybe a visit that happened.
Yeah, I heard there was a visit.
Yeah, that happened. It was supposed to be kept on a low, and it kind of got out here. And now Oregon is the team that has the best chance to flip Gavin Nix and Timothy Merritt. I know Tennessee has been poking around for a while. Tennessee is one of those teams that is firmly placed, I would say, in the playoff. Miami, as you alluded to earlier, Alex, one of those bubble teams to get into the playoff now. So that's something that recruits are looking at. I'm not going to say that that is not a factor, because I think it is. I think the fact that you got teams that are firmly in place, and Miami is kind of hoping on a whim and a prayer that they get into the playoffs, and that's something recruits are definitely factoring in.
I think that's part of it. I think another part of it is just, and I don't think it's a coincidence that the three verbal commits we're talking about who are possible or likely to flip away, all on the defensive side of the football, Marcus, because I think even, losing the game to Syracuse, obviously that making you a bubble team for the playoffs, I think that's part of it. But I think another part of it is Miami's defense this past year didn't have a lot of answers or anything. They really only played, let's say, 3 good games this year against Florida State, whose offense is abysmal, against Florida to open the season, and against Wake Forest a couple of weeks ago. And so, yeah, I wonder if even more so than what happened this past Saturday against Syracuse, that's kind of the small picture. I think the big picture of Miami's defense all season long is also a factor when you talk about possible defensive flips away.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the defensive side of the ball is going to be the point of emphasis. Miami's defensive back group, I think, is probably its strongest as it stands right now, with Tim Merritt, Chris Ewald, uh, and um,
Fitzgerald,
Bryce
Amari Wallace.
Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
Yeah, Amari Wallace. Amari Wallace was the name that was escaping me. He is returning from an injury, and I think he's going to be a really good addition to this class. So I think that defensive back group is probably the group that needs the most help from what we've seen from the Hurricanes this season. So you're excited kind of what is to come, but they're not a ton of defensive backs that can come in and make an immediate impact. Damari Brown, he did so a couple years ago now. You could say he's already played 2 seasons already. Time just flies by, Alex. But he's already played 2 seasons already. But not every guy on that recruiting list is going to be a Damari Brown. So they're going to need some help in the transfer portal, I would think, for the defensive back position group, for sure. I would think linebacker as well as defensive tackle. You're going to lose a ton of defensive tackles from this season, including C.J. Clark, Marley Cook, Simeon Barrow. These guys have been plenty in the rotation. Possibly, of course, Akeem Mesidor as well. Ruben Bain will be back, of course, another year, but that's definitely, I would say, the greatest need as far as defense when it comes to the transfer portal and the recruiting class. You definitely need to add bodies to all 3 levels on that defense.
Let me ask you kind of a big picture recruiting question, because over the last couple of years, it's become very clear, and Miami fans already knew this even before Mario Cristobal came back, that, recruiting has historically been his superpower, right? And I've looked the last couple of recruiting cycles when you used to have a few weeks, right? The National Signing Day used to be around December 20th. So you used to have about 3 weeks between your final game and early signing day, and how Cristobal would really maximize that time. Because, he works probably harder on the recruiting trail than 99% of the other coaches out there, and same thing for his staff. And now that you condense that to national signing period starting just a few days after the season ends, I almost feel like maybe we got caught with our pants down a little bit, that we don't have enough time to kind of work that loaf of magic between the last game and between signing day.
Yeah, it is kind of a weird time crunch. I believe it definitely puts players, I think, in the most precarious situation, just because there's a lot of players that are playing in high school playoffs right now still, and they're kind of mixing in one of the biggest decisions they could make in their lives, signing to an institution for the next 2 to 3 years, or 3 to 4 years. And they're still very much in game mode, kind of locked in as well. So I think that's kind of the main factor for me, as far as the kids being bombarded with calls and texts, and also trying to focus on, their last year of high school. I think for Miami, it may be kind of fortunate, somewhat, that they don't have to go to the ACC championship game this
Yeah.
week. They can focus on the recruiting class, and still maybe sneak into the playoff. That would be, an excellent scenario that for all the optimists out there, that's pretty much kind of what they're thinking that could happen. But yeah, I think it's something that I would rather not see. I like the signing day to be on the 22nd, 21st, somewhere in that area. That's where it's been for the past few years. Moving it up, I think, just puts everybody in a time crunch. Myself in my industry, um, just the agents out there trying to negotiate what they can negotiate out there, as well as the kids, as I mentioned earlier, and the coaches. So I think this puts everybody kind of at a disadvantage. But there is another signing day. I think people, have to
Yeah.
kind of realize that, hey, there is another signing day, and there could be a couple of recruits who could be delaying their signing and not signing this week. So
Well, and also, like, how much does it change that, they still have to sign financial aid and other paperwork this week, but they got rid of the national letter of intent. And it's like, I'm not sure how much it actually changes because you're still signing financial agreements, but now you don't have the quote unquote binding letter. I mean, does it change the landscape much? Like, does that maybe open up the possibility that someone who may declare for one school in December might flip in February?
I think you're exactly right there. I think it just gives them a little bit more flexibility to,
Yeah.
decide on a school between now and that spring semester. I mean, December will be a month to remember for a lot of these recruits who are looking to sign or not sign. So, like I said, I think it will kind of give them some flexibility to decide on another school if they feel like, hey, because let's be honest, there's going to be a lot of firings and hirings of
Yeah.
coaches in the next couple of weeks, and a lot of the times that is the main factor for a lot of these recruits. Who is the recruiter actually recruiting them to said school could be not at said school anymore. So that is definitely a factor that will be considered for these recruits. And I think that's why you have that flexibility, because, December is it's a fun month, and it's a lot of moving and shaking. And these kids should have the option to jump to a different school if the coach that's recruiting them is no longer at that school anymore.
I agree. Well, we're joined here by Marcus Benjamin, publisher at canescounty.com on Rivals. We talked about potential flips away. All right. There's a lot of rumors about Hilton Drake Stubbs, 4-star, 5-star safety, actually flipping to Florida, 4-star linebacker Gavin possibly flipping to Oregon, Timothy Merritt, 3-star corner in Miami's class, possibly flipping to Tennessee. Are there potential flips coming in? Because we have to hope that the loafers can work their magic in the next couple of days. We'll talk about that and so much more with Marcus Benjamin. You guys want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Guys, I know my team may or may not be headed to the college football playoff, but at least I can wager on all the playoff games. I can wager on the conference championship games. And guys, you can get ready to tackle all the NFL action as well with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure you guys check out Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin does an awesome job taking you around all the big games, all the big storylines. He'll be following, of course, the CFP committee and whatever they decide to do over the next couple of weeks before we finalize those playoff spots. So make sure you check out Locked On College Football, much like Locked On Canes. It's available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. All right, so Marcus, Miami could lose some flips this week. Who would you say would be Miami's best shot in terms of gaining a flip? Because we've gotten a few of those every single cycle under Cristobal leading up to this one.
Yeah, it's still TJ Alford, the four-star linebacker out of Vero Beach. I think is still the best possibility for Miami to flip from Ohio State. And I think that's real smoke there. And if Gavin Nix indeed does flip to Oregon, it opens up another spot at linebacker, which I think this linebacking core is really good. I think there's a lot of potential guys who can contribute maybe right away for this team. So if you have a guy like TJ Alford added to the class, it's going to add some quality depth, especially to the defensive side of the ball. He's super quick. I think he's got really good size and speed. I think he's a player that's very similar to Gavin Nix. And both of them, lay the wood when it comes to putting ball carriers on the ground. So I chance right now, although the talk has quieted down somewhat so far. I mean, we'll see what happens within the next couple of days.
Well, hold on. You cut out for a second. Which player are you talking about now? Pickett?
No, I was still talking about Alford. I think,
my bad. Yeah.
Yeah, I still think that he is the best possible flip for Miami. But I mean, now that you brought up Pickett, though, I've heard that the talk has really kind of subsided on that end as well. That he is going to likely stick with LSU. So it's tough to kind of hear that news as well, because Miami trying to flip him pretty much since he committed to LSU in the summer. And by many accounts, I think many people thought that Miami was the best possible contender outside of LSU. So they've been poking and trying to see if he could possibly, flip to Miami, but it doesn't look like a likely scenario. I think Alford's still the best chance at this point.
I hear you. Miami's going to have needs in the transfer portal as well, Marcus. I get, and I'm a little bit torn on the quarterback thing, because I'm really a fan of Emory Williams and the way I believe he is developing. I know he doesn't have a lot of on-field experience, but I believe he's making strides within the program. But I do get the vibe that Miami is going to at least explore the quarterback market. Now, maybe they decide that an upgrade isn't available, but I think they're going to explore that quarterback market. Obviously, you've got other key playmakers you're going to need to replace. You're losing guys like Xavier Restrepo. You're losing Jalen Rivers. I do think there are internal replacements for him at left tackle. Markel Bell got a lot of experience this year. You're losing Kiko Maui Noah. You talked about all the defensive tackles Miami is losing. I'll tell you right off the bat, Marcus, a player that I really covet, who is said to be entering the transfer portal. This report came out yesterday, and I've wanted this guy for a couple of years, I'll be honest. Kevin Concepcion, the superstar do-everything slot receiver from NC State. I know if Miami were to bring him in, he would be, and I'm not saying Restrepo is replaceable, but if you're going to do that, I can't think of a better option than Kevin Concepcion. So that's really a guy I would love to go in and grab.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Remember what this guy did to us a couple of years back in a game. He had a monster game against Miami. And, I think, he would be a guy that you can kind of plug and play automatically. I think they definitely should look at wide receiver, because you're potentially losing three guys in Sam Brown, Xavier Restrepo, and Jacoby George. I believe Isaiah Horton stays with the program. But, you got JoJo, who's kind of ready to go, I think, to kind of step into that Jacoby George type of role. But, yeah, if you can add a guy like Concepcion to kind of replace Restrepo, I think it'd be a perfect match. It definitely seems like it would fit for this offense. And, I think Shannon Dawson likes fast guys who are reliable kind of in the slot, and you can kind of mix and match the different positions. Concepcion is definitely one of those type of players. So I could definitely see that happening, especially if Miami sees some departures in that wide receiver room, which I do kind of expect as well. So that would be a great addition to this program.
Do you have any thought at quarterback? I mean, some of the names being thrown out there, you wonder if maybe Miami replaces one Washington State guy in Cam Ward with another, and John Mateer, who had a big year. But I do see him linked a lot to Oklahoma, so I'm not really sure what the landscape there is with Mateer, but I think that could be a really good option. Marcus, some people have brought up to me over the last 24 hours or so that perhaps Fernando Mendoza, the Cal quarterback, that he may become an option. Of course, he's a local kid, went to Miami Columbus, the alma mater of Mario Cristobal. Now, Miami didn't recruit him out of high school, or they didn't offer him a scholarship, but that was Manny Diaz, not Cristobal. So I don't think he would hold that against Miami's current coaches. And I'm not sure if he's hitting the portal, just to be clear, nor do I know if CJ Bailey would hit the portal. But, when we bring up Kevin Concepcion, we might as well bring up the guy who was his quarterback for most of the year. And then people also wonder, if you're playing 4D chess, if you could convince CJ Bailey to come down here to Miami, maybe Jeremiah Smith gives us another look.
I love you, Alex, because you dream, man. You dream
Dream
big.
big, right?
I love it, man. Because I mean, I think that's something that maybe all Miami Hurricanes fans were hoping, to kind of hear, to get a combo deal with CJ Bailey and Jeremiah Smith. Both of those guys are very happy where they are. I'm not sure if the hometown, vibe or feel is enough to get them to return or return back to South Florida. So that would be I think a dream scenario. I love CJ Bailey, loved watching him in high school. He's just a gamer is what he is. I think the knock on him was basically like his mechanics, and doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, but he's a gamer. He always finds a way to win. He is similar to Cam Ward, where he kind of buys a lot of time, and he definitely surveys the field for as long as he can before he decides to run. So I think he's very similar in Cam Ward when it comes to that's concerned, and his gamer ability. There's been many a times where he's just bought so much time in the pocket, watching him in high school and just making play after play. So that is definitely a possibility. I wouldn't say very likely. I wouldn't bet on it. Don't go searching for that bet on the Hard Rock Bet app. I don't think that's a good play, from my perspective. But Fernando Mendoza, man, shout out to him, because he has kind of exceeded expectations over there at Cal. Cal was like a late offer in his process, a late kind of commitment and then signing. So kind of happy to see him have that success out there in Berkeley. I think he's a player that could be a starter for Miami if he did indeed transfer. I do think he is a better option than a Emory Williams and a Reese Boffenbarger, the next two quarterbacks up for the Miami Hurricanes. I do believe Fernando Mendoza would be a better option or choice, just based on game reps. He's had plenty of game reps now at Cal and has led that team to a bowl. So I think, and last season it was a pretty good season for him as well as a freshman. So I think the sky's the limit for Fernando Mendoza, and I know he would love to come back home to play for the Miami Hurricanes. I would say that's a better option than CJ Bailey possibly returning to South Florida.
I actually agree with you on that. All right, I want to talk about off-season goals coming up with Marcus, and also his take on what the playoff committee may decide, because I think Miami has a strong case to still sneak in despite not making it the ACC championship. But, if the committee has to decide between a 2-loss Miami and perhaps a 3-loss Alabama, that may not go well for us. But we'll see. You guys want to keep it locked. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. We're certainly not done with Game Time. Guys, this is the only ticket app that I use. And hey, maybe you're not going to the ACC championship game this week, but if Miami gets into that CFP or whatever bowl game Miami would end up in otherwise, you can find the best deals on tickets on the Game Time app. And the magic thing about Game Time is the prices go down the closer you get to the event. And they've got a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Guys, I love the all-in pricing feature. Shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We have the publisher of CanesCounty.com. I'm very proud that I contribute to that site because I think Marcus Benjamin here does a fantastic job keeping everyone updated on what's going on. And it's going to be a busy week on Canes County. So Marcus, around 7:15 tomorrow night, Tuesday night, we're going to get a new batch of CFP rankings. It's up to fate now for Miami. They lost control of their own destiny, but we have seen the pattern in the past. My guy Gio Milian brought this up, and he's not wrong, that the committee seems to think about TV ratings as well when they make up these rankings. And Miami still has Cam Ward. Miami's offense is a get your popcorn ready type of unit. The defense, not so much, although it can make the other team's offense become a lot more exciting. How much of a shot do you give Miami to sneak in?
I give them about a 15% chance, to be honest, because it's going to be tough. Because if you think about the college football playoff and kind of how it's all constructed, you know that 5 teams are conference champions that are going to get in, the group of 5 champion, as well as the top 4 conference champions. So those are already 5 slots, and then you want to add Notre Dame with 1 loss. There's and them ranked number 4 I believe in the AP poll. There's no way that they keep Notre Dame. You talked about TV ratings, and that may be one of the biggest draws in college football is Notre Dame. So that's already 6 spots already kind of, gone, especially with Miami not having a chance to win the championship, the ACC championship. So that leaves the losers of these championship games who you'd likely think will get into the playoff. Teams like Penn State, let's just say they lose just because they're not the favorite. That team with 2 losses, I would think that they're still going to rank a team like that ahead of Miami, and a team like Georgia. That is probably the most interesting one, because I think Miami should be rooting for Texas in this one, because Texas they're sitting with 1 loss. So if they have 2 losses, they're not going to leave Texas out of the playoff. Georgia, possibly, because they would have 3 losses, compared to Miami's 2. So that's a team that you would hope, I guess, adds another loss to their loss column to make it a possibility. The teams that you worry about are these SEC teams that are not playing in the SEC championship game, because they're just sitting there with 2 losses. Alabama's sitting there with 3 losses and still ranked ahead of Miami in the AP poll. That's not a good sign at all. And then you got Tennessee 10-2. They're pretty much guaranteed a spot. They're not playing next week. So that definitely, I think, takes a spot away. So you've got now 7 teams if you add Tennessee. Ohio State, another team not playing next week. that's 8 teams. So you're down to basically 4 spots where you're battling teams like Alabama, South Carolina as well, because they are 3 loss teams that is currently ranked ahead of Miami in the AP poll. Also doesn't bode well that South Carolina beat Clemson,
Yeah.
so if Clemson ends up winning the ACC championship, punches their ticket, South Carolina will have that, well, yeah, we beat the ACC champion
Yeah,
in
we
South
definitely need
Carolina.
SMU. We need SMU to win the ACC championship. There's no question about it. Because if Clemson wins, they're in, and then Miami's not getting in over SMU. So we need SMU to win that game.
Right, and then there's Indiana. Indiana's got that 1 loss. They also are ranked ahead of Miami as well. You would think that they are going to take one of those at-large bids as well, just because they have the 1 loss. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough scenario because the Big 12 champion is going to get in. So that's Arizona State, Iowa State, Boise State likely getting in as well. I think there's a chance. There is definitely a chance here, because as we kind of ran down all of those teams, you still see kind of a glimmer of hope, like there's a glimmer of sun in my shot here. See this little piece
Yes.
of sun right here? I think that's
it.
the hope right there.
That's the playoff chance. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So I think there's definitely a chance, but teams like South Carolina, Alabama, and uh, you know, I think those teams are the teams that you are probably scared of the most, of like taking your spot in the playoff, just because they're SEC teams. And let's just be honest, there is SEC bias.
Yeah, it's weird. You look at a couple of like the outside predictions and factors. ESPN actually still is projecting. Maybe they know something, maybe they don't, but they're actually projecting Miami to get in as an 11 seed. But then at the same time, I also like to follow the money, and I like to follow the sports books, Marcus. So I do take some comfort in the idea that ESPN, which usually doesn't go out of their way to pump sunshine for ACC programs or for Miami, that they still project Miami to get in. But then I look at the FanDuel odds, and with the prop being, will Miami make the 2024-2025 college football playoff? The huge favorite is no at minus 1,400. And then yes is at plus 760. So, I mean, I kind of feel like I probably would put a little money on yes if ESPN thinks Miami can get in. So I think it's worth a shot at plus 760 odds, but the odds are obviously not in Miami's favor there. Oh,
Yeah.
man. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, yeah, the odds are definitely not in their favor. But like I said, I think if the Georgia Texas game is gonna be critical. Like Miami, we're gonna have to put the horns up, instead of the U for that Saturday, because I think Georgia, that's gonna be an interesting one. If they would rank Georgia with 3 losses behind Miami, my guess is probably not, because even with a loss, just because that Alabama and South Carolina are still, ranked ahead of the Hurricanes, and they have 1 more loss than Miami, both of those teams. So I think that is what you want to watch for on Tuesday. Are they going to rank Alabama and South Carolina in front of Miami? If they do, then I don't see a case where they can jump those teams, especially because, none of these teams are playing. But if Miami ranks in front of those 2 teams, then I think Miami's got a good shot.
Well, great stuff here as always from Marcus Benjamin. And guys, I want to let you know on tomorrow's episode, I'm going to give you my off-season checklist of things that I think need to happen during a critical off-season for the Miami Hurricanes, because this could end up being the most important off-season of the Mario Cristobal era, since you just came up this year of winning the ACC, and maybe we'll come up short into getting into the CFP as well. But Marcus, before we let you run, let people know what they can find at canescounty.com, because this is a huge week. If you guys want all the National Signing Day, signing week updates, let people know how they can get a free trial at the site.
Absolutely. Actually, right now we're running a yearly subscription, 75% off the yearly subscription. So that's basically $25 for an entire year, which is a really great deal over at Rivals. And that's for the entire Rivals network. So you'll get all the information and tidbits from signing day, leading into it and also after it as well. So definitely take advantage. It's Cyber Monday today for many Americans across the country. So a lot of people will be online shopping, but also make sure you stop by canescounty.com and take advantage of that 75% off your annual subscription to get everything, not only just about the Miami Hurricanes, but nationally when it comes to National Signing Day on Wednesday.
I love that. I know on Cyber Monday, a lot of us spend money on stuff we don't need. You probably need that information at canescounty.com a lot more than you need some of this other stuff out there. So take advantage of that offer. Huge thank you to Marcus Benjamin. Follow him on X at Benjamin Rivals. Follow us at Locked On Canes. And we will talk to you again tomorrow with an exhaustive off-season checklist right here on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.